Hi everyone, today we're going to dive into one of the most pressing challenges in global health today, malaria prevention. Now, malaria affects around 249 million people every year, and it claims the lives of more than 600,000 people, mostly young children in sub-Saharan Africa. And yet it's a disease that's both clearly preventable and also treatable. Now then, why is it still here? Well, in this video, we're going to take a look at the key strategies that are used in order to prevent malaria transmission, and this involves from killing mosquitoes to even just protecting ourselves from their bites to the role of medication and even vaccines that are clearly changing the future landscape of malaria control. First, we're going to take a look at the current malaria stats and status quo society. Now, malaria is a life-threatening parasitic disease, and it's caused by a species called the Plasmodium species, and it's primarily Plasmodium falciparum, which accounts for the majority of the severe cases and death caused by malaria. And it's transmitted to humans by the bite of an infected female Anopheles mosquito. And according to the World Health Organization, malaria affects approximately 249 million people each year, and it results in over 600,000 deaths annually, with children under the age of 5 in sub-Saharan Africa comprising the majority of these fatalities. Now, malaria transmission is a vector-borne process that follows a sort of a cyclical pattern, and only female Anopheles mosquitoes are capable of transmitting the disease. And the mosquitoes are nocturnal feeders, and they peak in biting activity during typically dusk and dawn. The transmission cycle of malaria is as follows. A mosquito bites an infected individual, and it ingests the parasite in the form of gametocytes. And within the mosquito, the parasite undergoes sexual reproduction, and it matures into sporozoites. And upon biting a new host, the mosquito injects the sporozoites into the bloodstream, and it initiates a sort of new infection cycle. Now that we understand how malaria is transmitted and how malaria is such a devastating disease in status quo society, let's now move on to how malaria is actually prevented. Now, vector control is a universally recognized method as one of the most effective approaches for reducing malaria transmission rates at scale. And some of the most commonly employed methods under vector control is insecticide-treated nets, also known as ITNs. Now, ITNs are a cornerstone of malaria prevention, especially in a lot of endemic regions. And these are essentially just kind of these bed nets or mosquito nets, and they're treated with long-lasting insecticides, and they generally repel or kill mosquitoes on contact. Now, they provide a kind of like a physical barrier and both a chemical protection against malaria, and therefore they're very effective. And when they're properly used and maintained, they can remain effective for up to around 3 years, but this really, again, depends on the sort of chemical that the net was treated with and the sort of durability of the net itself. And mass distribution campaigns have significantly reduced malaria morbidity and mortality in a lot of regions, and these mass distribution campaigns generally involve insecticide-treated nets, mostly because of how cheap and how affordable they are in comparison to vaccines, for instance. On the other hand, we also have indoor residual spraying, which generally kind of involves the application of insecticides on walls and on ceilings of homes and on different furnitures where mosquitoes tend to just rest after feeding. And effective IRS programs, or indoor residual spraying programs, they generally must be repeated in sort of intervals of 6 to 12 months, but this again depends on the insecticide's residual efficacy. And this process of kind of applying indoor residual spraying is very effective in settings where the mosquitoes are just predominantly in rest conditions indoors. And again, this is another very effective and at the same time very affordable campaign.